Hi, Jason, Vanessa. What's been going on?
Well, we had an audit of our Microsoft 365 environment last week. Head office insisted.
Okay. Well, what did the audit say?
They said it was the most unsecure tenant they've ever seen. And if Microsoft could have a minus secure score, then this tenant would probably be it.
Minus secure score, Jason? What a disgrace.
I didn't think the tenant was that bad.
Okay, look, Jason, Vanessa. Configuring a Microsoft 365 tenancy shouldn't actually be that complicated. In fact, you can follow a 3-step process. Step 1, get it secure. And don't make it up. You need to follow a framework like the CIS Benchmarks. Step 2, make sure it stays secure. Things change all the time. I like to call this drift detection. And step 3, back up your configuration so you can recover when things go wrong.
That sounds like a lot of work. I'm trying to manage all the security on our Microsoft 365 tenant. Plus, I'm trying to do desktop support.
Well, Jason, you could use a tool, something like Tenant Manager.
Interesting, Jonathan. What is this Tenant Manager? I mean, I was going to get Jason to manage just another tenant, preferably in another company.
Well, Tenant Manager allows you to align your tenant to the CIS framework. It gives you loads of tools to keep your tenant secure with drift detection, plus backups, so you can always recover, all from one dashboard.
This sounds like just the thing we need.
I'm so pleased you contacted me today because Tenant Manager are today's Takeover Tuesday. Okay, Jason is right about one thing. Securing a Microsoft 365 tenant, well, it sounds like a lot of work. But the truth is, it's only complicated if you're making it up as you go along. And that is the problem for most MSPs. They don't always know what settings to put in place. They haven't standardized across tenants. So every client they support ends up configured completely differently. And that is a recipe for mistakes, inconsistency, and risk. Now, I understand the problem. You might be short on staff. You might be short on time. You might be managing dozens or even hundreds of tenants. And you simply don't have the time to keep up with every new Intune setting, every new compliance requirement, and every new Microsoft blog post. And I've got a question for you. How do you know what secure looks like? Well, that is where the CIS benchmarks come in. Now, they're an industry-recognized, certified framework that defines best practice for securing Microsoft 365, Intune, Windows, Office apps, and more. And the best part is, Tenant Manager bakes CIS benchmarks right into his product. So instead of guessing or relying on Jason, you can measure, track, and deploy real security baselines across every tenant that you manage. Shall we take a look? Let's go. So I'm logged in to Tenant Manager. Now at the moment, within Tenant Manager, we've got backup and restoration of our tenant configuration. We've got drift detection, which I'll talk about in another section. And we've also got CIS reporting. Now what you can see at the moment is a list of all of the tenants that we have added into Tenant Manager. So it's a multi-tenant platform, ideal for MSPs. Firstly, we've got the name of the tenant. Then we've got the drift status, which I will talk about later in the video. And then we've got a secure score and a live secure score. So what's the difference between these two things? Well, this is the secure score from yesterday's backup, okay? And this live secure score is the live secure score. So you can quickly see at a glance if there's anything happening within your tenant. So maybe you come in one morning and one of your tenant's secure score has dropped significantly. That might mean there's a problem, okay? Also, you might come in and the secure score might have gone up, which is great, but what's happening in the tenant to make this happen? We can also move over to CIS, and again, it's the same principle. We've got a CIS score and we've got a live CIS score. And then we've got the status of our backup. So even from this screen, we can look at a tenant. We can say, well, unfortunately, it's drifted. And our secure score might have changed overnight. Plus our CIS score might have changed. There's a problem with this tenancy. So we can see everything at a glance. So what I'm going to do now is drill into one of these tenants. So my Hawthorne Bell tenant here. Now, one of the great things about Tenant Manager is it's reporting with the CIS framework. So Tenant Manager, they're a CIS certified partner, okay, which is quite a high level within CIS. So it's got great reporting. You can see here, look, for example, our CIS score is 346 out of 368, but you can see there's some drift going on here. So I can simply click into here, and it gives me more information still. So this tenant is just a test tenancy. I've got no iOS devices or Android devices, but I've got a few Windows devices in here, okay? And we are scoring 94%, so it's not too bad. But all I can do is drill into here, and it's telling me exactly what I am failing with. So this is a level 1 CIS benchmark. Ensure allow telemetry is set to basic. At the moment in this tenancy, that is failing, okay? But this isn't just reporting. I can go right over here and I've got a couple of options. I can ignore this if I want to. There might be a reason why this is set to this. Or, more importantly for MSPs, I can simply deploy, okay? And I can fix this problem, okay? Really useful. You can see here it says L2. Well, this is a CIS level 2 benchmark. And what I can do with my tenants is work down all my failures. I've got a lot of past as well. And I can fix the issues. So I can quickly align my tenant with the CIS framework. But I can do much more than that. If I go over to deploy here, you can see it takes me to the deploy template screen, okay? So I, as an MSP, I might onboard a new customer. Great. I select them as my managed target, so Hawthorne Bell, and then I can select the template that I want to deploy to this tenancy. Now you can see here, look, and we'll talk about these templates more in a moment, but right out inside the box, Tenant Manager comes with all these templates. So we've got the EUC toolbox, that's for clients who are migrating over from that platform. We've got CIS level 1, CIS level 2, plus the guys at Tenant Manager have put together their own. So it's Software Central Baseline. They've taken the best settings out of all these other ones and they've created their own baseline. We've also got the National Cybersecurity Centre baseline, plus Essential 8, which I'm led to believe is an Australian compliance framework. So if I just simply select this one here, and you see, if I just drill into here, you can see exactly what this baseline is all about. Within Entra, we've got some decent conditional access policies. So a lot of MFA going on, require Windows MAM, app protection policies in there, that's in Entra. I can look at Intune. We've got a lot of things going on here. OneDrive config, lots and lots of settings. In total, got 10 Entra settings, 104 Intune settings. I can select all if I want, or I can just pick these as I want them, okay? So if I just select all like that, scroll down all these, confirm, and then if you're using change control in your business, you can type it in here, click on confirm, and all these policies get pushed into your Microsoft 365 tenancy. How easy is that? But also, the team at Tenant Manager recognize that a lot of MSPs, even some IT departments, they've got their own baseline, okay? They want to create their own. So how do you do that? Well, what you can do is use a golden tenant, okay? I know a lot of platforms that use golden tenants. So if I go over to my tenants here, if I register a new tenant, I simply log in as a global admin. I can mark it as a gold tenant. So I can spin up a tenant, maybe add a Microsoft 365 Business Premium license and configure that tenant exactly how I want it. Exactly how I want it for all of my customers. I simply log in here and I mark it as a gold tenant, okay? So if I just cancel out of this, there's a demo tenant here. If I open the tenant settings, you can see that this one is a gold tenant. Okay, so if I then want to build out my own templates, I simply go to templates. I've got one here, but let's create a new one. Give it a name, something like this. And then I choose my gold tenant. So I can have multiple gold tenants in Tenant Manager. So why is this useful? Well, maybe I'm an MSP and I've got 3 different plans. I might have a gold, silver, bronze. I've got financial services using the gold plan. It contains most of my robust security. Whereas I've got some local firms and security is not top of their agenda, okay? So they use the bronze plan. So what I can do, I can load 3 tenants into Tenant Manager, make them all gold tenants, and then create a template for each one, okay? So I would choose this gold tenant here, choose the last backup, okay, which will bring these settings in. And you can see in this particular tenant, there's 130 Entra settings. I think there's a lot of test conditional access policies, to be fair, on this one. We've got 726 Intune settings. I'm not going to drill into all these. I'm just going to show you a few examples. Okay, so do that one. Okay, click confirm. And you can see I've got my MSP template there. And to deploy it, it's the same as last time. I would go to deploy. I'd select my new tenancy, which is this one here. And then you can see that my new template is here. So that's a really good introduction to Tenant Manager. What should we talk about next? So you've followed a proper framework. Good on you. You've deployed your baseline and you're feeling pretty good about the security of your tenants. But here's the thing. Microsoft 365 is always changing. Users, they click on buttons. Admins, they're always testing things. PowerShell scripts run in the background, and suddenly your tenant, it no longer matches what you deployed. That is what I call drift. And drift, it's silent. You don't get alerts. You don't get change logs. No one takes responsibility. That is why drift detection matters. And with Tenant Manager, you're not just spotting drift. You can see exactly what's changed and you can roll it back in seconds. And if you're an enterprise, Tenant Manager gives you full audit logs and change control. So every who, when, and why is recorded for compliance. Let's take a look at drift detection. Okay, let's talk about drift detection. Now you can see here, look, both my tenants have a drift status of drifted. But what have they drifted against? Well, there's a couple of ways we can set this in Tenant Manager. So we can set it at the Tenant Manager level. So if I go into here, you can see here, look, drift check. We can use a backup or a template to measure drift, okay? Let's talk about backup first. You've got a tenant and a backup is happening every night in Tenant Manager. So what Tenant Manager can do is check last night's backup and look at your tenant today. And if there's any drift, it can say there's drift. So we're comparing it to the backup. The other way is we can use templates, okay? So I've onboarded a new tenant into Tenant Manager. I've deployed everything from my gold tenant or my template, so my MSP template. I've deployed all that to my new customer. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure drift according to that template. Okay, so if anything changes, I measure it that way. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So that is at the Tenant Manager level. But we can also do it per client. Okay, so we might have different settings per client. So if I go into Tenant Manager demo here, go to open tenant settings, and you can see, look, I've got the same thing here. So at the moment, this is measuring against its backup. I can easily change its template, my own templates, and I can select my MSP template. And then this tenant will be assessed for drift against that template. Okay, hope that makes sense. Going back to here, look at Hawthorne Bell, and we can see here that it's drifted. So I can click into here, and it's going to give us some more information. So Hawthorne Bell has drifted against our template. So it's set against this template here. Okay, and we can see all the drifts here. So I can click on here, and it shows you in red exactly what the drift is. Okay, so you've got all your settings from the backup data here, in the template, and then all your live data, so you can see exactly what's happened. And then we've got options. We can push the policy, the new policy. We can revert if that's what's happened. We can ignore it because we might want to ignore it. There might be a reason why this is drifted, or we can delete it. Okay, so we've got all those options. And as you can see here, it's looking at all our conditional access policies. So it's saying there's a new policy added. Again, we've got the options there, what to do. We've got the device compliance policies. So everything that is in the template, which isn't present or has changed in the new environment, we can handle this way. So that is drift detection in Tenant Manager. So we've now got a trusted framework. You've got drift detection in place, and you're sleeping really well at night until someone logs in and breaks something. So what do you need? You need backups. Not just file backups. We're talking about backing up Intune, conditional access, scripts, groups, even device filters. Because Microsoft, unfortunately, doesn't give you a restore button for this type of thing. But fortunately for you, Tenant Manager does. And for enterprises, it even supports a dev to production style workflow. So you can test your policies in a golden tenant and then safely promote them into production once you're ready. Let's take a look. Okay, so let's take a look at the all-important backup and recovery of our tenant configuration. Let's just head over to settings. There's a couple of things I want to show you here. Firstly, the automatic process. So Tenant Manager will do a drift check and backup at 3:30 every day. We can choose what time we want. That is set to 3:30 at the moment. We can also see that the scheduled backup is enabled, which is good. So we can just set it and forget it. At the moment, it's set to daily, but you can choose what time frame that you want. Okay, if I just now head over to one of my tenants, let's look at Hawthorne Bell. You can see we've got all our backups on this tenant listed here. I can also drill into these and I can see what's been backed up. Okay, so we've got everything there, which is in our tenant, everything that has got a backup. Okay, going back into the tenant now. So we've got this here, look, restore from backup, restore from tenant backup. So I can click into here. I can easily select the backup that I want. It'll give me everything that's been backed up within there. I can search for the policies if I want. Okay, I can drill down into here. So perhaps maybe a conditional access policy has been deleted or something like that. I can simply click on that. I can click on confirm. We've got that change control again, and then we can confirm, and that restoration will happen. It's that easy. Okay. When it comes to backup and restore as well, if I just want to create a backup of this tenant, maybe I'm changing something, okay, and it's outside of the scheduled backup, then I've also got a button here to create a new ad hoc backup. And then I can restore from gold tenants, okay? So if I click on here, I can choose my tenant. I will then get a list of all my gold tenants, okay? Once it's in there, I can choose the backup. And again, we saw this earlier, I can choose an individual policy if I want and simply confirm. So I'm restoring from a gold tenant. We've also got a full audit log here. So everything that happens, everything one of your users does is completely audited. Okay. So what should we talk about next? Here's a familiar situation. You've got a client asking for weekly reports. They want to know which devices are non-compliant, which users haven't logged in, and how secure their tenant is. So generally, you've got a couple of options. You can spend your Friday nights generating reports every week. Or you can give them full admin access to your management tool, which you don't want to do. But there's a better way. With Tenant Manager, you can assign granular roles, either to your own team or to clients, without handing over the keys to your kingdom. Let me show you. Okay, if we head over to the security tab here, you can see we can create new roles. Okay, there's some roles out of the box here, but I can create a new role. I give it a name, I give it a description, and you can see here, look, we can get really granular with the permissions that this role has in Tenant Manager. backup, for example. They can have read access, write access, or no access. And we can go right through this list and create our own bespoke roles, okay? We've also got different roles within Tenant Manager, so these have some kind of access over Tenant Manager as a whole. And if I go to then over to Tenants, for example, click on Hawthorne Bell, we can open our tenant settings and we can assign different users with different roles to this specific tenant. So this is ideal if you've got like an IT manager. You might work at an MSP and you look after a client who has an on-site IT manager. They might want certain access over the estate. And this is a great way how to do this within Tenant Manager. So you can keep everything secure, but you can give the right level of access. And as I've mentioned before, everything is fully audited, okay? So you can always go into the logs and you can see who has accessed what and when. So everything is completely tracked. Now, everything we've seen today is perfect for MSPs who are managing dozens or even hundreds of tenants. But if you're running enterprise scale Intune, there are lots of features too in Tenant Manager that make a big difference, like audit logs and change control. So, Jason, how did the follow-up audit go?
They said it's now one of the most secure tenants they've ever seen. And if Microsoft awarded bonus points for security, we'd probably get them.
Excellent. Now let's see if you can keep it that way for longer than a week.
Yes, Vanessa.
Much better. You see, that's what happens when you use a tool like Tenant Manager. So, stop guessing. Follow a framework and keep your tenants secure with Tenant Manager. Now, I'd like to thank Tenant Manager for sponsoring today's video. Check out the link in the description to learn more and try it out for yourself. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. Look forward to seeing you again soon.